So a common question I will get when somebody is working with self-inquiry is the following. I've come to this place where I can disidentify from thoughts. I'm able to actively recognize thoughts as thoughts. I don't have to overtly think, oh, there's a thought, there's a thought, there's a thought. I might start out that way, but at some point it just becomes obvious and I'm able to disidentify, not grab onto a thought, not get on the thought train, and yet remain alert. The sense of I, the sense of being, the sense of the one who is aware of all this and the entire aware space is obvious now. And it's obvious that the thoughts don't define that. They sort of float around in it like soup, but they're not defining of my experience. And they're not defining of me. They're just kind of like noise. So I've come to this place where there's a pure sense of being. And the thoughts are kind of rambling around, but I'm not grabbing them anymore. But I get disoriented. And then I don't know what to do. And then I feel uncomfortable, or I feel frustrated, or maybe I even feel some fear or even anger. So this is a reasonably common experience. And it's a good sign that you've gotten to this place where you're able to see a thought as a thought and not get caught up in thoughts, not realizing they're thoughts. Like, this is how my practice always goes, or a doubt, oh, I doubt this probably isn't right. I'm not doing this right. It must be more like that. These kinds of thoughts aren't catching you anymore. You recognize, oh, there's a thought there. There's a thought there. And the space gets quiet, gets neutral. And yet there's this milieu of thoughts floating around. So this disorientation feels like an issue or a problem because you don't know what to do about it, or you feel like you need to do something about it. So let me just give a little background on what's going on here. You could say that one of the micro steps along the cascade of what occurs with good self-inquiry is that we do get to this place where we've successfully and clearly understood in practice what it means to disidentify from thoughts. And we can do it. We can do it ongoing. A thought might catch our attention here or there, but generally speaking, we're clear on when a thought starts to arise. We're clear that thoughts about practice aren't my thoughts, and they're not me doing that thinking. They're simply a thought arising, and the sense of me or I is completely independent of that. That's an important step, and it's very obvious when it happens. It's obvious that you don't have to think about the fact that there are no thoughts here, that being is self-validating and self-obvious to confirm it, because it's self-obvious, it's self-confirming. It's a subtle yet profound and obvious knowing. But it's not yet awakening. So usually the next thing that happens here is that we start to feel this sort of disorientation. We don't know where to orient ourselves because we're so used to orienting ourselves with thought, right? Thoughts are sort of relational. I know who I am because of how I relate to that person, that situation, that other thought, this emotion, this time, this place. And so when we see thoughts as thoughts and they stop having that pull on us, it's like one of the magnetic poles disappears, then the magnetic pole at the subjective end has nothing to react to. So it kind of feels out of sorts, like it wants something to react to, but it knows there's nothing to react to. This is the discomfort I'm talking about. And again, it can feel disorienting, it can feel frustrating or emotional in a different way. It can even have physical side effects, like you might feel a little dizzy. You might have to even grab something to steady yourself on occasion if you're walking around. But the underlying issue with this sort of micro step is that you're in a bit of an in-between place between where you've successfully disidentified from thoughts. You're not clinging to them to orient. but the paradigm or the tendency to orient is still there. There's still some urge or tendency to orient somewhere, to something, and yet you know experientially now that this pure being experience, pure consciousness experience, requires no orientation. So that job of orienting really has nowhere to act, and that just feels uncomfortable. But like so many things with this process of realization, it's kind of a binary deal. On one side of the coin, it feels uncomfortable, disorienting, confusing, but on the other side of the coin, it can feel like bliss, deep peace, a huge release. And the trigger point, of course, as always, is resistance. If we think something's gone wrong, if our instinct is this isn't right, we're going to scramble. We're going to feel like the monkey that is swinging from branch to branch and vine to vine, and suddenly has no branch or vine to grab onto and feels very disoriented. I feel like it's falling. It doesn't know what to do. But luckily in this case, we can just let go. There's nowhere to fall but into a deeper sense of being. That's the beauty of it. So when we recognize that it's actually okay not to have a thought to grab onto, a vine, a branch, in this space, it's a huge relief. It's only disorienting when we feel like we should be oriented. But when we realize we don't even have to try to orient, even orienting is not something that's necessary here. This is so primary, so fundamental to awakeness, to just pure sensing, pure being, that there's no need to even orient. It's just that simple, completely effortless. Once we recognize that, maybe it takes a little bit of time for those emotional triggers to fall away, the sense of disorientation or frustration or confusion. Sometimes you just have to feel that for a bit in the body without making a big story about it. And then you'll find this place of equanimity, peace, pure being, undisturbed and undisturbable. Because all disturbances occur within it. They're just thoughts. So this is a place where you're neither disoriented or oriented. It's more primary than either of those. This is par for the course. This is how it goes. So when you get to this place where you're able to disidentify from thoughts, you know what a thought is, you know what a doubt is, you know what a practice thought is, you know what an I thought is, and you're able to see that those are just thoughts, just movements in consciousness. And that doesn't disturb the sense of you as consciousness without having to think about it. Then the next thing that may occur is some disorientation or frustration. And if you notice here, the belief that I even have to orient is another thought. It's actually just a more fundamental belief that orientation is a thing, that it has to happen. It's a side effect of all that thinking I've been doing for years. And then you're able to let that go and realize you're fine. There's nothing to orient to. Then things can get very quiet, peaceful. Just stay there. Be alert to the movement of mind, to thoughts that begin to arise. But notice there's a fundamental, uncaused peace and relaxation and neutrality in this place of being, because it's always like that. It's always peaceful. In a sense, it's always unmoving, because all movements occur within. And within that space, every movement is sort of arising with an opposite movement. It's just fluctuations. Just like a wave. A wave has to have a peak to have a trough and so forth. But the whole of consciousness doesn't really move. It's just a space of peace and neutrality. But you don't need to label that. So if you come to that place, keep in mind that the need to orient toward anything, including thoughts, is just another thought.